Nothing says marital bliss like finding your wife's phone buzzing at 2:30 in the morning with messages from two different men. I'm Eddie Granger, and I've always prided myself on being a straight shooter. Own a small auto shop in Millfield, Massachusetts. Fix engines, solve problems, keep my head down. Simple life, simple rules. But there's nothing simple about discovering your wife of 8 years is playing house with not one, but two different guys. The phone lit up again. Sam was in the shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize. Steam rolled out from under the bathroom door while I sat on our bed, staring at the device that was about to change everything. V had sent 3 messages in the past hour. Short, sweet, and absolutely devastating. Can't wait for tomorrow night. Hotel room is confirmed. Tell Eddie you're working late again. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I expected trembling. Maybe some dramatic moment where the world tilted sideways. Instead, I felt this cold, calculating calm settle over me like morning frost on a windshield. I scrolled up through their conversation history. Weeks of planning, dinner dates disguised as client meetings, weekend getaways labeled as company retreats, every lie cataloged in perfect digital detail. Then I checked her calendar app. P. Ashford. Lunch meeting, 1:00 p.m., Riverside Motel. Paul Ashford. My best friend since high school, the guy who was best man at our wedding, the same Paul who came over every Sunday to watch football and drink my beer while complaining about his own marriage troubles. The shower stopped running. I placed the phone exactly where I'd found it and walked downstairs to make coffee. My reflection in the kitchen window looked the same as always. Brown hair getting thin on top, stubble that needed shaving, shoulders that showed 38 years of lifting engines and carrying other people's burdens, but something had shifted behind my eyes, something that made me look like a stranger to myself. "Morning, honey," Sam said when she came down 20 minutes later. She wore her navy business suit, the one that made her look like she belonged in boardrooms instead of our modest kitchen with its peeling linoleum and outdated appliances. "Morning," I replied, handing her a cup of coffee. "Big day at the office?" She took a sip and nodded. "Client presentation. Might run late again." "Seems like you've been running late a lot recently." Her green eyes met mine for just a second before she looked away. "Marketing never sleeps, you know that." I knew a lot of things, like how she'd started wearing perfume to work when she never used to bother, how she'd suddenly become interested in yoga classes that apparently didn't exist at the gym she claimed to attend, how her phone had developed a mysterious habit of staying face down whenever I was around. "I'll probably grab dinner with the team," she continued, gathering her purse and laptop bag. "Don't wait up." She kissed my cheek, the same quick peck she'd given me every morning for the past 3 years. Routine affection, like checking the oil or rotating tires, maintenance to keep things running smooth. The front door closed with its familiar squeak. I watched through the window as she backed her Honda out of our driveway, the same car I'd spent 2 weekends fixing last month when she claimed it was making strange noises. Funny how she'd never mentioned those noises started right around the time she began her extracurricular activities. I finished my coffee and headed to work. Granger's Auto Repair sat on the edge of town, a converted garage with 2 bays and an office that smelled like motor oil and old coffee. My employee, Jim Jensen, was already there when I arrived, wrestling with the engine of a 1998 Ford pickup. "Morning, boss," he called out. Jim was 6'4", built like a linebacker, and had hands that could crack walnuts without trying. He'd done 5 years for armed robbery before finding religion and a talent for fixing transmissions. Most honest man I'd ever met, which was becoming a rare quality in my experience. "Jim?" I nodded, hanging my jacket on the hook by the door. "How's the Ford coming?" "Transmission's shot. Owners debating whether to fix it or sell it for scrap." I understood the dilemma. Sometimes you invest in repairs, hoping to get more good years out of something you've grown attached to. Other times, you cut your losses and start over with something that won't break down on you. "Let me know what they decide," I said, settling into the office chair that had seen better decades. The morning passed in the comfortable rhythm of work. Brake jobs, oil changes, a radiator replacement on a minivan whose owner apologized 3 times for the mess her kids had made in the back seat. Normal problems with normal solutions, unlike the situation waiting for me at home. Around noon, I took a break and walked to Mona's Pub, 3 blocks down Main Street. The place had been serving beer and gossip to Millfield residents since 1962, and Mona Sullivan had been behind the bar for at least half that time. She had gray hair, sharp eyes, and a memory for local drama that rivaled the town newspaper. "Eddie," she called out when I walked in. "Bit early for you, isn't it?" "Just needed to get out of the shop for a few minutes," I said, taking a stool at the bar. The lunch crowd was thin. A couple of retirees playing cards in the corner booth, a traveling salesman picking at a sandwich while scrolling through his phone. "How's Sam doing?" Mona asked, wiping down glasses with a towel that had seen better days. "Haven't seen her around much lately." "Busy with work," I replied. "You know how it is?" Mona's expression shifted slightly. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Eddie, you know I don't like to spread tales, but I saw her car at the Riverside Motel last Tuesday, middle of the afternoon." The Riverside Motel? Same place mentioned in Sam's calendar. "Probably meeting a client," I said, keeping my voice level. "She does that sometimes." "Maybe," Mona said, but her tone suggested she wasn't buying it. "Just thought you should know. This town's got eyes everywhere and people talk." I thanked her and walked back to the shop, my mind working through the implications. If Mona had seen Sam's car, others probably had too. Small towns were like that. Everyone's business became everyone else's entertainment. The afternoon crawled by. I changed the oil in a Camry, replaced the alternator in a Jeep, and listened to Jim's theories about why modern cars weren't built to last. Normal conversation, normal work, while my brain cataloged every lie Sam had told me over the past 2 months. At 5:30, I closed the shop and drove home. Sam's car wasn't in the driveway, which didn't surprise me. According to her calendar, she had another client meeting, scheduled for 6 o'clock, at the Riverside Motel, with Paul Ashford. I parked across the street from the motel and waited. The place was a relic from the 1970s, the kind of establishment that charged by the hour and didn't ask questions about luggage. Perfect for people who needed privacy for activities they couldn't conduct at home. Sam's Honda pulled into the parking lot at 6:15. She parked near the office, checked her appearance in the rearview mirror, and walked to room 12 with the confidence of someone who'd made this trip before. 10 minutes later, Paul's blue Chevy Silverado arrived. He looked nervous, glancing around the parking lot before hurrying to the same door Sam had entered. I sat in my truck for another hour, watching the closed door of room 12, feeling that cold calm settle deeper into my bones. This wasn't rage anymore. Rage was hot and unpredictable, the kind of emotion that led to broken knuckles and regret. This was something else entirely. This was the feeling you get when you finally understand a problem that's been plaguing you for months, when all the symptoms suddenly make sense and you can see exactly what needs to be fixed. I drove home and made myself dinner. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, the same meal my mother used to make when I was sick. Comfort food for a situation that was anything but comfortable. Sam came home at 9:30, carrying takeout bags from Chen's kitchen. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "Client dinner ran long, but I grabbed your favorite." General Tso's chicken. She was right. It was my favorite. Had been for years. The fact that she remembered this detail while lying about everything else struck me as almost funny. "Thanks," I said, accepting the container. "How did the presentation go?" "Really well. I think we'll land the account." She launched into a detailed story about client reactions, budget discussions, and timeline negotiations. The lies flowed so smoothly I almost admired the craftsmanship. She'd clearly spent time constructing this fiction, adding enough specific details to make it believable. If I hadn't seen her walk into that motel room, I might have bought every word. "I'm exhausted," she said after finishing her performance. "Going to take a bath and turn in early." I nodded and continued eating my Chinese food while she disappeared upstairs. The chicken tasted like cardboard, but I finished every bite. Waste not, want not, as my father used to say. While Sam soaked in the tub, I sat at our kitchen table and made a list. Not a dramatic, vengeful manifesto, just a simple inventory of facts and options, the same methodical approach I used when diagnosing engine problems. Problem, wife cheating with 2 different men. Evidence, text messages, calendar entries, eyewitness accounts. Complications, both men married, one is supposed to be my best friend, wife's career involves company ethics policies. Desired outcome, truth revealed, consequences delivered, dignity maintained. I folded the paper and put it in my wallet. Tomorrow, I would start making phone calls. But tonight, I would sleep in my own bed, next to my cheating wife, and dream about the look on her face when her carefully constructed world came crashing down around her. The next morning started like any other, except for the weight of knowledge sitting in my chest like a stone. Sam kissed my cheek, lied about her schedule, and drove off to whatever deception she had planned for the day. I waited exactly 10 minutes, then called in a favor. "Bridget, it's Eddie. Hope I'm not calling too early." Bridget Ashford had been married to Paul for 12 years. She worked as a nurse at Millfield General, had 2 kids in elementary school, and possessed the kind of no-nonsense attitude that came from dealing with difficult patients and unreliable husbands. "Eddie, hi, what's going on?" I was wondering if I could borrow Paul's socket wrench set. Got a job that needs some specific sizes, and I know he's got that comprehensive craftsman kit. A pause. He's not here right now. Left early for some insurance training seminar in Springfield. Won't be back until tomorrow. Insurance training seminar. According to Sam's calendar, she had an all-day client workshop today. Both of them conveniently out of town, both with elaborate cover stories. No problem, I said. Maybe I'll catch him this weekend. Eddie? Bridget's voice carried a note of concern. Is everything okay? You sound different. Just tired. You know how it is? Another pause. Yeah, I do know how it is. Something in her tone made me wonder if Bridget had her own suspicions about Paul's recent behavior. Nurses were trained to notice details, to spot symptoms that others might miss. After hanging up, I drove to work and found Jim already elbow-deep in the Ford's transmission. Morning, boss. Owner decided to fix it. Said he's had the truck too long to give up on it now. Smart choice, I said. Sometimes the things worth saving are worth fighting for. Jim gave me a curious look but didn't comment. He'd learned to read moods during his time in prison, and he probably sensed something different about mine. I spent the morning working on routine repairs while my mind planned the afternoon's activities. At lunch, I drove to the Millfield Public Library and used one of their computers to research Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, Sam's employer. The company had a comprehensive website with sections on corporate values, ethical standards, and employee conduct policies. I printed out several pages, paying particular attention to their guidelines regarding workplace relationships and conflicts of interest. Pinnacle took a dim view of employees who engaged in relationships that could compromise their professional judgment. They were especially strict about married employees who became involved with colleagues, viewing such situations as potential sources of workplace disruption and legal liability. Perfect. From the library, I drove to the Riverside Motel and had a conversation with the desk clerk, a college-age kid with bored eyes and a name tag that read Tyler. I'm trying to track down my wife, I explained, showing him a photo of Sam. She's been meeting clients here for business, but I need to reach her about a family emergency. Problem is, she's not answering her phone? Tyler studied the photo. Yeah, I've seen her. Usually comes in with some guy on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Room 12. That would be her business partner, I said. Tall guy, dark hair, drives a blue pickup? Nah, that's Thursday guy. Tuesday guy drives a silver sedan. Different dude entirely. I thanked Tyler and slipped him $20 for his discretion. He pocketed the bill with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned not to ask questions about his customers' arrangements. 2 different men, 2 different days, same room. Sam was more organized than I'd given her credit for. The drive back to the shop gave me time to think about timing. Paul would be back from his fake seminar tomorrow. Sam had another client meeting scheduled for Thursday evening. That gave me a narrow window to set things in motion. I called Pinnacle Marketing from the shop's landline, asking to speak with Human Resources. This is Eddie Granger, I told the woman who answered. I need to report a potential ethics violation involving one of your employees. I'll transfer you to our compliance hotline. Please hold. The compliance officer who took my call introduced herself as Janet Morrison. She had the kind of professional voice that suggested she'd handled these situations before. Mr. Granger, I understand you want to report an ethics concern. Can you provide me with some details? My wife is Samantha Granger, senior team lead in your marketing department. I have evidence that she's been engaging in inappropriate relationships with at least one coworker, using company resources to facilitate these meetings and lying about her activities to both her employer and her family. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Granger. What kind of evidence are you referring to? Text messages, calendar entries, credit card receipts, eyewitness accounts. I can provide documentation for everything I'm claiming. Janet asked me to email the evidence to a secure address, which I did from the library computer an hour later. The file included screenshots of Sam's text conversations, copies of her calendar entries, and a detailed timeline of her activities over the past 6 weeks. I also included Tyler's contact information at the Riverside Motel, in case they wanted independent confirmation of Sam's regular visits. Hada, we take these matters very seriously, Janet assured me when I called back to confirm she'd received the package. We'll begin an investigation immediately. I should warn you that if the allegations are substantiated, there could be significant consequences for your wife's employment. I understand, I said. I'm not doing this to hurt her career. I'm doing it because she's been lying to everyone, and the truth needs to come out. That was partly honest. I did believe the truth needed to come out. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to watching Sam's carefully constructed facade crumble. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. I worked on a brake job for Mrs. Patterson's Buick while mentally rehearsing my next phone call, the one to Bridget Ashford. At 5 o'clock, I closed the shop and drove to the Ashford house on Maple Street. It was a modest 2-story colonial with a neat lawn and children's toys scattered across the front porch. The kind of home that represented stability, commitment, and all the things Paul was apparently willing to throw away for afternoon encounters at a cheap motel. Bridget answered the door wearing scrubs, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Eddie, what a surprise. Come in." The living room was comfortable but lived in, with family photos covering the mantelpiece and homework assignments spread across the coffee table. This was what a real marriage looked like, messy, complicated, but genuine. "Can I get you something to drink?" Bridget asked. "No thanks. I just wanted to talk to you about something, about Paul." Her expression shifted, becoming guarded. "What about Paul?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken at the motel. Sam's car in the parking lot. Paul's truck arriving 10 minutes later. Both vehicles still there an hour after I'd started watching. Bridget stared at the screen for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were hard. "How long?" she asked. "At least 6 weeks, probably longer. I have documentation going back to early March." "Documentation?" I explained about the text messages, the calendar entries, the motel visits. Bridget listened without interruption, her face growing paler with each detail. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally asked. "Because you deserve to know. Because your husband and my wife have been making fools of both of us, and I think it's time that stopped." Bridget was quiet for several minutes, staring at the family photos on the mantelpiece. Pictures of happier times, when her marriage was something she could trust. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I've already done it. Called Sam's company, provided them with evidence of her relationship with a coworker. They're investigating." "A coworker?" Bridget looked confused. "But Paul works for Mutual Trust Insurance." "Sam's not just cheating with Paul," I said gently. "There's another man, someone from her office named Vince." The color drained from Bridget's face entirely. "2 men?" "Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, same room, different partners." Bridget sat down heavily on the couch, as if her legs had suddenly stopped working. I knew something was wrong. He's been distant, secretive, coming home late, making excuses. But I thought maybe he was just going through a midlife crisis or something. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I know this is hard to hear." "No," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I'm glad you told me. I'm tired of being the only one who doesn't know what's going on in my own marriage." We talked for another 20 minutes. Bridget asked questions about the timeline, the evidence, the motel visits. She was processing the information like the medical professional she was, gathering facts before making a diagnosis. "What happens now?" she asked as I prepared to leave. "Now we wait," I said. "Sam's company will probably call her in for questioning tomorrow or Friday. When they do, the whole story will come out. Paul's name will come up, and then you'll have choices to make." "And you? What are your choices?" I looked around the living room one more time, taking in the family photos and children's artwork and all the evidence of a life built on shared commitment. "I've already made mine," I said. The drive home gave me time to think about consequences. By tomorrow evening, Sam would probably know her marriage was over. By the weekend, Paul would be facing the same reality. Their comfortable deceptions would be replaced by lawyers, custody arrangements, and divided assets. I felt no satisfaction in this knowledge, but no regret either. They'd made their choices over the past several months. I was simply ensuring those choices had appropriate consequences. Sam's car was already in the driveway when I got home. She was in the kitchen, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner: chicken parmesan, garlic bread, Caesar salad, the kind of meal she usually reserved for special occasions. "What's all this?" I asked. "Just felt like cooking something nice," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We haven't had a real dinner together in weeks." Guilt, I realized. She was feeling guilty about something, probably her afternoon activities, and trying to compensate with domestic gestures. "Smells good," I said, which was true. Whatever else Sam was, she'd always been a decent cook. We ate dinner, making small talk about work, the weather, plans for the weekend, normal married conversation, the kind we'd been having for 8 years, except now I knew it was all performance, carefully scripted lines delivered by actors who'd forgotten how to be genuine with each other. "Eddie?" Sam said as we were clearing the dishes. "Are we okay?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" I mean us, our marriage. You've seemed distant lately, and I wondered if there was something wrong." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. Green eyes that had once made me forget my own name, blonde hair that caught the light just right, the same face I'd been waking up next to for nearly a decade. "We're fine," I said. "Just tired, I guess. Work's been busy." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Good. I was worried. That night, we went through our usual bedtime routine. Sam read a magazine while I watched the news. We brushed our teeth side by side at the bathroom sink, the same ritual we'd performed thousands of times. But everything felt different now, like we were actors in a play that was about to close, going through the motions one last time before the curtain fell. I lay in bed listening to Sam's breathing slow into sleep, knowing this was probably one of our last nights together as husband and wife. Tomorrow, the phone calls I'd made would start bearing fruit. The investigation would begin, the truth would surface, and then we'd both have to figure out what came next. Thursday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth and the kind of bright sunshine that made everything look deceptively cheerful. Sam left for work at her usual time, kissing my cheek and promising to call if she was going to be late. She wouldn't be calling. By the end of the day, she'd have bigger problems than managing her schedule. I spent the morning at the shop, trying to focus on a transmission rebuild while my phone sat silent on the workbench. Janet Morrison from Pinnacle's compliance department had said they'd move quickly on serious allegations, but I hadn't expected to hear anything this soon. The call came at 11:30. "Mr. Granger, this is Janet Morrison. We've completed our preliminary investigation based on the evidence you provided." That was fast. When the documentation is this comprehensive, it doesn't take long to verify the facts. We've confirmed the motel visits, reviewed the text messages, and spoken with the employee in question. "Vince?" "Vincent Vance, yes. He's been terminated effective immediately. We've also placed your wife on administrative leave pending a full review of her conduct." I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot I hadn't realized was there. "What happens next?" "That depends on several factors. The company's response, any legal implications, whether other employees were involved. These situations can get complicated quickly." "I understand. Thank you for taking this seriously." "Mr. Granger? I hope you know this wasn't an easy decision. Your wife has been a valued employee, but we can't tolerate behavior that violates our ethical standards." After hanging up, I called Jim over to the office. "I need to step out for a while," I told him. "Can you handle things here?" "Sure, boss. Everything okay?" "It will be." I drove to Mona's pub, needing somewhere to think while I waited for the next shoe to drop. The lunch crowd was bigger than usual, a mix of retirees, off-duty workers, and people like me who needed a quiet place to process complicated emotions. "You look like a man with something on his mind," Mona said, sliding a beer across the bar without being asked. "Just work stuff," I replied, which wasn't entirely a lie. Ending a marriage was a kind of work, requiring the same attention to detail and careful planning as any other major project. "How's Sam doing? Haven't seen her around lately." "She's been busy." Mona gave me a look that suggested she knew more than she was saying, but didn't press the issue. In a town like Millfield, gossip traveled fast, but people also knew when to mind their own business. My phone rang at 1:15. Sam's number. "Eddie?" Her voice sounded strained, like she'd been crying. "Can you come home? I need to talk to you." "I'm at work. Can it wait until tonight?" "No, please. It's important." I finished my beer and drove home, taking my time. Sam's car was in the driveway, parked at an odd angle, like she'd been in a hurry. Through the kitchen window, I could see her pacing back and forth, talking on her phone. She met me at the front door, her face red and blotchy from crying. "They fired me," she said without preamble. "Pinnacle fired me." "What happened?" "They said someone reported me for having an inappropriate relationship with a coworker. They had evidence, text messages, photos, hotel receipts, everything." I followed her into the living room, where she'd spread documents across the coffee table like she was preparing for battle. "Who would do this?" she asked. "Who would spy on me and collect evidence and try to destroy my career?" I sat down across from her, studying the paperwork. Termination letter, COBRA insurance forms, a final paycheck stub. The bureaucratic aftermath of poor choices. "Maybe someone who cared about the truth," I said. Sam looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means maybe someone got tired of watching you lie to everyone around you." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Sam's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something approaching fear. "You," she whispered. "You did this." "I made a phone call, that's all. I told the truth about what you've been doing." "You destroyed my career." "You destroyed your career. I just made sure there were consequences." Sam stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in months. "How long have you known?" "About Vince? About Paul? Long enough. Her face went white. Paul? Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at the Riverside Motel, room 12. You've been busy. Sam collapsed onto the couch like someone had cut her strings. Oh, God, Eddie, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're good at explanations, good at stories, good at making people believe whatever you want them to believe. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been cheating on me with 2 different men, using our marriage as cover while you figured out which one you wanted to end up with. Tears started flowing down Sam's cheeks, but I felt no urge to comfort her. Those tears were for herself, not for the pain she'd caused or the trust she'd broken. I never meant for it to happen, she said. It just evolved. Which part? The affair with my best friend or the affair with your coworker? Both. Neither. I don't know. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I was unhappy, Eddie. We've been drifting apart for years, and these men made me feel alive again. So you decided to have your cake and eat it too? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Sam? Explain it to me. Help me understand how a person justifies lying to everyone who trusts them. She was quiet for several minutes, staring at the termination letter like it might change if she looked at it hard enough. I was going to choose, she finally said. I was trying to figure out what I wanted, who I wanted to be with. I knew I couldn't keep both relationships going forever. How considerate of you. Did Paul know about Vince? Did Vince know about Paul? Her silence was answer enough. So you were lying to them too. 3 men, all thinking they had some kind of special relationship with you, all being played for fools. I never wanted to hurt anyone. But you did hurt people, Sam. You hurt me, you hurt Bridget, you probably hurt Vince's wife. You hurt everyone who cared about you because you were too selfish to make an adult decision about what you wanted. My phone buzzed with a text message. Bridget, Ashford. Paul came home early. We need to talk. Can you come over? I showed Sam the message. Looks like your other secret is about to come out too. Eddie, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling, figure out how to rebuild our marriage. I looked at my wife, soon to be ex-wife, and felt nothing but exhaustion. Not anger anymore, not hurt, just a bone-deep weariness that came from realizing how much energy I'd wasted on someone who didn't deserve it. There's nothing to rebuild, I said. You burned it all down when you decided 2 other men were more important than your husband. Where are you going? To talk to Bridget? She's dealing with the same situation you put me in, except she didn't ask for any of this. When will you be back? I paused at the front door, looking back at the woman I'd promised to love and honor for better or worse. We'd definitely hit the worst part. I don't know if I will be. The drive to Maple Street gave me time to think about the conversation I'd just had. Sam's tears had seemed genuine, but so had her lies over the past several months. I wasn't sure I could trust my ability to distinguish between her authentic emotions and her performances anymore. Bridget answered the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red, but she looked more angry than sad. He confessed, she said without preamble. Told me everything. Well, everything about your wife, anyway. Apparently he doesn't know about the other guy. How are you holding up? I'm furious. Not just at Paul, but at myself for being so naive. The signs were all there, and I ignored them because I wanted to believe my marriage was stronger than it apparently was. We sat in her living room again, but the atmosphere was different now. Yesterday, we'd been sharing suspicions. Today, we were dealing with confirmed betrayals. What did Paul say? I asked. The usual garbage. He was confused, going through a midlife crisis, never meant for it to happen. He claims he loves me and wants to save our marriage. Do you believe him? I believe he's sorry he got caught. I believe he's scared about losing his house and his kids and half his pension. But love? I'm not sure Paul knows what that word means anymore. Bridget showed me the papers she'd prepared. Separation agreement, custody arrangements, a list of shared assets that would need to be divided. She'd been busy since our conversation yesterday. You work fast, I observed. I'm a nurse. When someone's bleeding, you don't stand around debating whether they need stitches. You stop the bleeding first, then worry about healing. Smart approach. What about you? What are you going to do about Sam? I told her about the phone call from Pinnacle, Sam's termination, our confrontation that afternoon. Bridget listened without comment, occasionally nodding when I described Sam's attempts to justify her behavior. She actually thought you might go to counseling, Bridget asked when I finished. Apparently. Some people live in fantasy worlds. They think they can have everything they want without consequences. And when reality finally hits, they're shocked that other people won't just forgive and forget. Paul's the same way? Paul thinks this is all a temporary setback. He keeps talking about how we can rebuild our relationship, make it stronger than before. He doesn't seem to understand that some things can't be fixed once they're broken. We talked for another hour about lawyers, living arrangements, and the practical aspects of ending marriages. It was a surprisingly businesslike conversation, focused more on logistics than emotions. As I prepared to leave, Bridget walked me to the door. Eddie, thank you for telling me the truth. I know it wasn't easy, but I needed to know. I'm sorry it had to happen this way. I'm not. Better to know who I'm really married to than to keep living a lie. The drive home took me past the Riverside Motel, where this whole mess had started to unravel. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a couple of long-haul truckers and what looked like a family on vacation. Room 12's curtains were closed, probably housing some other secret that would eventually come to light. Sam's car was gone when I reached our house. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to stay with my sister for a few days. Need time to think. We should talk when I get back. I crumpled the note and threw it away. There would be time for talking later, when lawyers were involved and everything was official. For now, I just wanted to sit in my own house and enjoy the silence. The phone rang around 8 o'clock. Jim's number. Boss, sorry to bother you at home, but there's something you should know. Word's getting around town about Sam and Paul. Mona's been fielding questions all afternoon. No, what kind of questions? People wanting to know if it's true, if you're okay, that sort of thing. Small-town gossip, you know how it is. I did know how it was. By tomorrow, everyone in Millfield would know the basic story. By the weekend, the details would be exaggerated beyond recognition. Sam and Paul would become cautionary tales, examples of what happened when people got too big for their britches. Thanks for the heads up, Jim. You need anything, boss, you just call. I mean that. After hanging up, I walked through the house Sam and I had shared for 8 years. The living room where we'd watched movies and argued about money, the kitchen where she'd cooked elaborate meals when she was feeling guilty about something, the bedroom where we'd made love and made plans and gradually grown apart without either of us noticing. It felt different now, like a museum exhibit of a marriage that had ended before either participant realized it was over. I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard I'd spent countless weekends maintaining. The grass needed cutting, the flower beds needed weeding, and the fence needed a fresh coat of paint. Normal homeowner responsibilities that would soon become someone else's problem. Tomorrow, I would start making phone calls to lawyers. Next week, I would begin the process of untangling 8 years of shared finances, shared property, and shared history. It would be complicated, expensive, and emotionally exhausting. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt something approaching peace. The lies were over, the truth was out, and everyone involved would have to live with the consequences of their choices. I raised my glass to the empty yard and the quiet house and the future I couldn't yet imagine. Here's to new beginnings, I said to no one in particular. The words felt good in my mouth, like a promise I was finally ready to keep. Friday morning brought rain and a phone call from a lawyer named Patricia Wells, who'd gotten my name from Bridget Ashford. Mrs. Ashford suggested I might be able to help you with a divorce proceeding, she said. Her voice carried the kind of professional authority that came from handling messy situations for people who'd never expected their lives to get messy. I think that's probably where this is heading, I admitted. Can you come in this afternoon? I'd like to review your situation and discuss options. Patricia Wells operated out of a converted Victorian house on Elm Street, the kind of place that suggested competence without intimidation. Her office was lined with law books and family photos, striking a balance between professional and personal that put me at ease. Tell me about your marriage, she said after we'd covered the preliminaries. I gave her the condensed version. 8 years married, no children, joint assets including the house and my business, wife's recent infidelity with multiple partners. Patricia took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking questions about timelines and documentation. You have evidence of the affairs? Text messages, calendar entries, witness statements, employment records. Her company terminated her yesterday for inappropriate workplace conduct. That's unusual. Most companies try to handle these situations quietly. The evidence was pretty comprehensive, hard to ignore. Patricia smiled slightly. I'm sure it was. What are you hoping to achieve in the divorce proceedings? I want out of the marriage with my dignity intact and my business protected. Beyond that, I'm not looking to punish anyone. I just want this to be over. That's a reasonable approach. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, so the infidelity won't directly impact property division, but it might influence other aspects of the settlement. We spent an hour discussing strategy, timelines, and potential complications. Patricia was thorough without being alarmist, explaining the process in terms I could understand. "I'll prepare the initial paperwork," she said as our meeting concluded. "You can expect this to take several months, assuming your wife doesn't contest the major issues." "What if she does contest them?" "Then it takes longer and costs more. But based on what you've told me about her situation, she probably has bigger concerns than fighting over assets." The rain had stopped by the time I left Patricia's office. I drove back to the shop, where Jim was finishing up the Ford transmission rebuild. "How's it looking?" I asked. "Good as new, maybe better. Owner's going to be happy." "Glad to hear it." Jim wiped his hands on a shop rag and gave me a careful look. "Boss, I don't want to overstep, but if you need to take some time off while you're dealing with personal stuff, I can handle things here." "Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that." "For what it's worth, I think you're handling this whole situation with a lot of class. Not everyone would keep their cool the way you have." I wasn't sure about the class part, but I was grateful for the support. Having employees who could be trusted was one of the advantages of running a small business. When life got complicated, you needed people you could count on. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers and the comfortable rhythm of routine work. Oil changes, brake inspections, a radiator flush for Mrs. Patterson's Buick. Normal problems with straightforward solutions, the kind of work that reminded me why I'd chosen this profession. Around 4 o'clock, Paul Ashford's blue Silverado pulled into the lot. He climbed out of the truck slowly, like a man walking to his own execution. His face was pale, his clothes wrinkled, and he had the general appearance of someone who hadn't slept much in the past 24 hours. "Eddie," he said, approaching the office door. "Can we talk?" I looked at my former best friend and felt nothing but tired resignation. "I suppose we should." We sat in the office while Jim worked on a brake job in the next bay. Paul stared at his hands, apparently struggling to find words for a conversation he'd probably been rehearsing since yesterday. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." "Okay." "I never meant for this to happen. Sam and we just connected somehow. Started as friendship, then became something else." "How long?" 3 months, maybe 4. "I know that doesn't make it better." "No, it doesn't." Paul looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time since he'd arrived. "I hate myself for what I did to you. You've been my friend since high school, and I betrayed that friendship in the worst possible way." "Yes, you did." "Is there any chance we can work through this? Find a way to salvage our friendship?" I considered the question seriously, thinking about 30 years of shared history. Little League baseball, high school parties, college visits, my wedding day when Paul had stood beside me as best man. All those memories, now tainted by the knowledge of what he'd been willing to throw away for afternoon encounters at a cheap motel. "No," I said. "I don't think there is." Paul nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer but hoped he might be wrong. "What about Bridget?" I asked. "What are you going to do about your marriage?" "I don't know. She's talking about separation, maybe divorce. Won't let me sleep in our bedroom, barely speaks to me when the kids are around." "Can you blame her?" "No, I can't blame her for anything. This is all on me." We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of Jim working in the next bay. Normal sounds of normal work, a sharp contrast to the wreckage of our conversation. "Eddie, did you know about the other guy?" "Vince? Yeah, I knew." Paul's face went even paler. "She was seeing both of us at the same time?" "Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. You were Tuesday." "Jesus." Paul put his head in his hands. I knew she was married to you, but I thought I was the only other person." "Apparently not." "Did Vince know about me?" "I doubt it. Sam was keeping everyone in separate compartments, making sure none of her stories overlapped." Paul was quiet for a long time, processing this new information. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "I need to ask you something," he said eventually. "Are you the one who reported Sam to her company?" "Yes." "Why? I understand being angry, but destroying her career seems like what? Like justice? Like consequences for choices?" "Like revenge." I thought about that word, revenge. It implied emotion, passion, a desire to cause pain for its own sake. But that wasn't what I'd felt when I made the phone call to Pinnacle's ethics hotline. "It wasn't revenge," I said. "It was accountability. Sam violated her company's policies, lied to her employer, and used company resources to facilitate her affairs. The fact that it was also cheating on me doesn't change the basic ethics violation." "But you knew what would happen when you made that call." "I knew there would be consequences. I thought those consequences were appropriate." Paul stood up, apparently ready to end this conversation. I guess I understand. I don't like it, but I understand it. Paul, one more thing. He turned back to face me. Stay away from my wife. Whatever relationship you had with Sam, it's over now. If you want any chance of saving your marriage, you need to focus on Bridget and your kids. I know. I already told Sam we couldn't see each other anymore. Good, because if I find out you're still involved with her, I'll make sure Bridget knows about it. Paul nodded and walked back to his truck. I watched him drive away, wondering if I'd ever see him again. Probably not, unless we happened to cross paths around town. Millfield wasn't big enough to avoid people completely, but it was big enough to keep your distance from those you no longer wanted in your life. Jim appeared in the office doorway after Paul's truck disappeared. Everything okay, boss? Getting there. Want to talk about it? Not much to say. Old friend made some bad choices, now he's dealing with the consequences. Jim nodded. He understood consequences better than most people. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. I closed the shop at 5:30 and drove home to an empty house that was starting to feel less like a museum and more like a place where I might actually want to live. Sam had left another note, this one longer than the first. Eddie, I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I realize how much I've hurt you. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am sorry. I'm sorry for the lying, the cheating, the way I took our marriage for granted. I'm staying at Linda's for now, but I'd like to talk when you're ready. Maybe we can find a way to work through this. I still love you, even though I know my actions haven't shown it. Sam. I read the note twice, then filed it with the other papers I was collecting for the divorce proceedings. Patricia Wells would probably want to see it, evidence of Sam's state of mind and her version of events. The phone rang while I was heating up leftover pizza for dinner. Bridget's number. How are you holding up? She asked. One day at a time. You? The same. Paul came by this afternoon to pick up some clothes. We had a conversation. How did that go? About as well as you'd expect. He's full of remorse and promises to change, but he still doesn't seem to understand that some things can't be unchanged. Did he mention his conversation with me? He said you two talked, and that you weren't interested in maintaining the friendship. I can't say I blame you. What about you and Paul? Any chance of reconciliation? Bridget was quiet for a moment. I don't think so. The trust is gone, Eddie. Without trust, what's the point of being married? I know what you mean. Have you heard from Sam? I told her about the notes, the apologies, Sam's apparent belief that counseling might save our marriage. Some people live in fantasy worlds, Bridget said. They think they can have their cake and eat it too, and when reality finally catches up, they're shocked that other people won't just pretend nothing happened. Sounds like we're both dealing with fantasy thinkers. At least we're dealing with them honestly now. No more lies, no more pretending everything's fine when it isn't. After hanging up, I spent the evening organizing paperwork for the divorce proceedings. Bank statements, property deeds, business records, insurance policies, all the documentation that would be needed to untangle 8 years of shared finances. It was tedious work, but also oddly satisfying. Each document represented a step toward independence, toward a future that belonged entirely to me. The house felt different that night, quieter but not empty, more like a place with potential than a place haunted by failed expectations. I went to bed early